In today's world, journalism plays a crucial role in shaping our understanding of the complex and pressing issues surrounding climate change. Through informed reporting, journalists bring to light the urgent environmental challenges we face, holding industries and governments accountable while educating the public on the need for action.
This responsibility is amplified today, World Press Freedom Day, a reminder of the vital role of a free press in protecting democracy, fostering transparency, and advocating for positive change.
Nurturing the next generation of climate journalists is more important than ever as we carry the torch forward, investigating and uncovering truths and crafting stories that inspire and motivate action.
Through our work, we can build a sustainable future and navigate the poly-crisis of today. Hello everyone, I'm Sigila Serna,
And I'm El Gison, and this is
writing the story of our generation.
Hello, everyone, joining us live today on our uh, Story Festival. We're thrilled to have you all here. Tell us in the comments, where are you guys watching from? Let's see how many different places are
Yes.
tuning in to our live today. I'm sure there are Filipinos watching right now. I think we have a few from India and
Indonesia?
Indonesia. Yeah.
Yeah. Tina Sieta Menpeni said, Happy Press Freedom Day, colleagues.
Happy
Yes, happy
World
Press
Freedom Day. We've got an exciting lineup today, right?
Yes, for sure. All while celebrating World Press Freedom Day. So let's get started.
Yes, we are honored to introduce Glenda Wallace, Deputy Press Attaché and Grant Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Manila.
I have to apologize up front. I lost my voice totally this morning. So bear with me. I have some tea to sip on. But it was really important for us to be here today. So I'll go ahead and say hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello to our good friends from Climate Tracker Philippines, and most importantly, to our young Next Gen Climate Bootcamp fellows. I'm so honored to be among you all today to celebrate the culmination of this very timely project. The U.S. Embassy is very proud to support Climate Tracker's Next Gen Climate Bootcamp because we believe that a free, independent, and vibrant press is key to an informed citizenry and a strong democracy. We also believe that critical, fact-based, and science-based reporting is essential in facing the climate crisis. This makes today's activity even more significant. As we mentioned already, we are marking World Press Freedom Day. And this year's theme, Journalism in the Face of the Environmental Crisis, is more relevant and urgent than ever. Climate change affects us all. Both of our countries are experiencing increased intense drought and stronger and more frequent storms, taking their toll on the livelihood of farmers, endangering food production, and putting lives at risk. Energy costs are at our all-time high, and global energy production is still heavily reliant on hot fossil fuels. More and more species are facing extinction due to altered marine and land ecosystems. Much more needs to be done to achieve our target to limit the warming of the planet below 2 degrees by the year 2030. So these are the harsh realities we are facing today. And these are also the stories that need to be told to help everyone understand that climate change is not just a scientific phenomenon, it is a crisis affecting billions of lives across the planet. Journalists are at the front lines of the fight against climate change, not just to report the events, but also to fight massive mis- and disinformation surrounding climate change. To our fellows, thank you for the talent, dedication, passion, and knowledge you have shown throughout the past year. It's amazing to see how you all were able to take these complex and technical concepts and translate them into stories, both in print and in video, that matter to your local communities. And the title of today's culminating activity sums it up perfectly: writing the story of our, that is, your generation. As future journalists, you will have the power to write that story. You'll have the platform to give remote and marginalized communities a voice. You will all play a significant role in keeping the government, the private sector, and civil society accountable to what we've promised to do to address the climate crisis, and to be critical about what we should strive to improve and must continue to do so. To all the wonderful people behind Climate Tracker and to all the Next Gen Bootcamp mentors, congratulations on this successful project. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with this next generation of journalists and for giving them the space to showcase their talents and advocacies. Through your work, climate journalism in the Philippines is thriving. And to our Next Gen Climate Bootcamp fellows, I'm so excited to see what lies ahead for all of you. We wish you all the best. And always remember that every story you write matters. The U.S. Embassy's press team looks forward to working with you all once you graduate. Thank you all for being our friends, partners, and allies in the fight against climate change. And once again, happy World Press Freedom Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that inspiring message, Ms. Wallace. True, journalists are at the front line. But moving on, we're privileged to hear from Secretary Robert Borge from the Philippine Climate Change Commission.
Esteemed journalists, defenders of press freedom, advocates of truth, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate World Press Freedom Day today with a profound recognition of the critical role that journalism plays in shaping our understanding of the world and driving positive change. The Philippines is a democracy, and I fervently believe in the power of responsible journalism to address pressing global and national challenges of our times. Now, in our era, marked by rapid ecological degradation and escalating climate crises, the role of journalism in promoting awareness and advocating for sustainable solutions cannot be overstated. You, our journalists, have the power to discuss difficult issues, to tell the public the warning signs of a planet in distress. But there are also stories that bring the reality of climate change into focus, urging us to act. You have the power to amplify the voices of and shine light on vulnerable sectors and communities affected by ecological injustice. By providing accurate, timely, and relevant information, you empower individuals and communities to make informed and rational decisions and take meaningful and ambitious steps toward more responsible stewardship of our planet. In these uncertain times, we should go beyond acknowledging the existence of ecological challenges. We must cultivate a deep respect for the intricate web of life that sustains us all, and consequently help move everyone towards positive change and make the right decisions. In doing so, we recognize that our faith is intrinsically linked to the health and well-being of our planet, and that our actions have far-reaching consequences for us and for future generations. Climate change demands transformative action on a global scale, and journalism can help amplify the urgency of the climate crisis and highlight innovative solutions from around the world, serving as a catalyst for change. From renewable energy initiatives to conservation efforts, journalists have the power to showcase various ways in which individuals, communities, and governments are working together to address climate change. We need stories that highlight not only the problems, but also showcase the solutions, the ingenuity of our scientists, the passion of our activists, and the resilience of our communities. We need stories that give hope, because hope drives action, leading to positive change. As we commemorate World Press Freedom Day, let us reaffirm our resolve and our commitment to the principles of press freedom, transparency, and accountability. Let us recognize the valuable role that journalism plays in advancing ecological awareness and driving climate action. Together, let us commit to writing the story of our generation, a story where the voices of the most vulnerable are heard, valued, and acted on. A story of a people humble enough to admit our shortcomings, brave enough to take on the responsibility of stewardship, and bold enough to see and make sure that things can be much better than they are. Let us harness the power of informed journalism to protect our planet and secure a sustainable future for us all. Thank you. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay kayo. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.
Indeed, we have the power to amplify the voices of the marginalized. Thank you so much, Secretary Borge, for tackling the intersection of climate change and journalism. It truly is the reason why we are
Yes.
all gathered here today.
And now, Mr. Jonathan De Santos, President of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, has a message for us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan De Santos, Chairperson of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines. It is often said that critical times are the best time to be a journalist. And there is no more critical time to be a journalist, particularly an environmental journalist, than now. The extreme heat that Southeast Asia is grappling with for the past weeks is a clear warning for the need for drastic action to address the climate crisis and to highlight how people in countries like the Philippines and other nations that are considered the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change are affected by policies and decisions that are often made by people who are hundreds of kilometers away. We have heard in recent years about the danger of fake news, but you, as environmental journalists, as environmental communicators, have to deal with one of the biggest fake news of all, that there is no climate crisis, that there is no need for us to change how we do things, that there is no need for us to review how we do business, and that there is no need for us to interrogate our ideas on development. The challenge before you is to explain the science behind climate change, to explain the science behind the environment. But the challenge is also to not fall into helplessness and to highlight how people, how ordinary people, how communities are dealing with the problems that they face, problems that they didn't cause. The challenge for you is to help steer the discourse towards more responsible stewardship of the planet, towards finding actual solutions instead of just greenwashing. The challenge is for you to help steer the conversation towards better policies for the planet and for our people. Good luck, everyone, and I'm sure that all of you have not just the skills, but also the commitment to communicate for the people and for the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Jonathan, for highlighting the role of journalists in the climate crisis. Before we dive into panel discussions, let's take a look back at our journey as Next Gen Climate Bootcamp Fellows. Our journey began with online learning sessions where we met our idols, shared ideas, and grew in knowledge. But it was the 5 days we spent together in person that transformed us into something more.
Hello, climate joggers! Mabuhay!
Those 5 days didn't just bring us closer as friends and as a community.
You say, he said, Gigi!
They unified us as a team, a family striving toward our shared dream of becoming the next gen of climate journalism.
Sa aming mga fellows are actually passionate sa climate journalism as well as yung aming mga mentors.
We came from very diverse background and our stories are very diverse.
Very good. I got a lot of good advice from my mentor.
Together, we've formed bonds that transcend professional boundaries. We're united in our mission to write the stories that matter, inspire change, and lead our generation toward a sustainable future. This is our journey, our story. We are your Next Gen Climate Bootcamp Fellows.
It's so nice to like look back into our journey as fellows because we've really come so far because as you can see we came from drafting our stories to writing it, and then ultimately publishing it for the public to read.
I know, and looking back at those videos, it reminds me of how fun it was interacting with our co-fellows, and more than that, learning from our mentors. We had in-person mentorship
Yeah.
sessions when we were in Quezon City, and we also went to Anilao. It
Yeah.
was truly an amazing experience.
Yeah. To truly immerse yourself in the Verde Island Passage, for instance, where we learned much about the marine ecosystem and how it's very interconnected to us, no matter how deep the body of water is. So, especially and I would also like to add the mentorship that we received, because it was hard. It was really challenging, but then again, it's part of the process, really,
I
because
know. I remember having problems, like not just me, but our co-fellows having problems with their pitches. So we had to
pivot.
we had to pivot, we had to create some changes, and it's so nice to know that now we've published these stories, and I can't wait to hear about them. What about you, Sige?
Of course, we're gonna hear about them, because in the next segment of this program, we will gonna have different panel discussions ranging from urban cities down to arts and climate. So, are you excited?
I am so excited. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into it.
Sure. Okay. So our first panel is urban resilience and climate change. So I'm joined by Andrea Ebdane and Jerson Danao to explore strategies that cities are adopting to withstand climate change. Andrea, I want to ask you. You wrote about socialized housing in the Philippines. How did your story change your perspective on urban resilience?
Originally, my story was supposed to be about gender, because I wanted it to be about a topic that was more familiar to me. So I wanted to write about domestic life, so particularly about like case studies of women and children whose lives are really upended because of climate change. So my case studies were, I had two matriarchs who I interviewed, and they shared their stories with me of how they're struggling because they were forcibly evicted from their homes back in Pasay. So Pasay is a city in Metro Manila, and the place where they used to live in, it was a danger zone because they experienced lots of fires, heat waves, floods, and from Pasay, they were forcibly evicted and relocated to Cavite, which is a province that's farther away from the center of life. So, less economic opportunities and opportunities for them to really find work and to provide for themselves and their families. So, because of that, they shared with me how they became resentful of their lives in Cavite. So, even though they're safe from climate disasters, even though they don't experience flooding anymore or heat waves or fires, they're still very much isolated from the means to live comfortably. So as the story began to unfold, and with help from my mentors, of course, they were the ones who really encouraged me to look at it from a bigger picture. I learned during my fieldwork that the case studies I interviewed were brought there under really inhumane conditions. So they didn't have doors, they didn't have plumbing, they didn't have electricity. The houses they had were very substandard quality. I was able to visit them myself, and the people I interviewed were from families of 8 people upwards. They really could barely fit. And so, like I mentioned, they grappled with a lot of negative attitudes because they'd rather be back where in Pasay, where they feel more secure in terms of job and economic opportunities. So it really made me realize about urban housing and climate change, about how for these people, being safe from climate disasters is not much of a comfort for them. Like, it's not a big consolation for them that they don't experience these environmental disasters anymore, because their priority is that they don't have proper jobs, they can't feed themselves, they can't pay their bills. So it's quite sad how low of a priority it is for them that they're safe from climate disasters.
Now let's go to Gerson, who lives in Baguio City here in the Philippines. From Cavite, let's go to Baguio. Tell us about the stories that you wrote about Baguio and how it has been affected by climate change.
First is the pedestrianization of Session Road. Session Road is one of the busiest streets in Baguio City, but every Sunday it is closed down to vehicles to give way for pedestrians, for families to walk around across Session Road, and even for baskers to perform. And it was also open for micro, small, and medium enterprises to showcase their products. According to the local climate change action plan of Baguio City, the city government of Baguio City, it is their active effort to reduce greenhouse gas emission in the city because based on the emission inventory of the Clean Air Asia in 2019, 24% were 24% of the pollutants were contributed by the transport sector. While according to the city government, the pedestrianization or walkability in the city is on its infancy stage because people would really choose comfort over the green would choose comfort because here in Baguio City the terrain is very challenging and it would take some time to to magkaroon ng change sa mode of transportation here in Baguio City. And the second story I wrote is about flowers and how it is affected by climate change. Baguio City has a good weather or climate condition as opposed with the lowlands here in the Philippines. But right now, I wouldn't consider Baguio City as cold kasi it's mainit right now eh. And yeah, Baguio City has a very conducive place for flower propagation or in Benguet in general. Pero based on the experience of Manong Amante Garapan, one of my interviewees for my story, he has noticed that his plants or the leaves of his plants is rolling and capping. And rolling and capping of leaves are indicators of heat-induced stress. And heat-induced stress among plants takes place when the ambient temperature is increases. And we could really attribute heat stress among plants and the increase in temperature with climate change. And that's how it affects yung mga flower and even the flower farmers, the gardeners here in Baguio and in Benguet in general because Benguet is one of the suppliers of flowers here in Northern Luzon. So yun, doon natin makikita yung effect ng climate change.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Andrea and Gerson, for sharing your stories to us.
Our next panel dives into biodiversity at the brink. So now I want to go first to Ivy and Jag. Tell us about the stories you wrote in the fellowship and the reason why you chose those stories.
One of the stories I delve in into this fellowship is the impact of climate crisis and other threats, such as illegal activities and encroachments, to name a few that are affecting Agusan Marsh and the indigenous people, namely the Manubo residing there. So, in case you don't know, Agusan Marsh is located in my home province, Agusan del Sur, and it stands as one of the most significant inland wetland ecosystems in the Philippines, which provides crucial ecosystem services to its surrounding habitats and communities. So, in this story, I shed lights on the struggles that these indigenous people face due to these threats and underscore the deep cultural ties they have to Agusan Marsh, where they have rooted themselves for generations. And I felt compelled to write this story because I believe it's underreported and it's heartbreaking to see Agusan Marsh slipping away. I've been there and I've seen the situation. And the very inhabitants who safeguarded it for so long are the ones bearing the brunt of that. So, another reason I was drawn to this narrative is my personal affinity for environmental causes and indigenous rights, because I've rolled up my sleeves and worked alongside with indigenous people before. So, I know I could give their voices the platform they deserve. That's all.
Let's move on to Jag.
My climate story focus on Candaba wetland. So this is basically the biggest wetlands in Central Luzon in Region 3. So these wetlands now serve as the region's natural answer to flood mitigation. In what way? The wetlands mark the lowest point in Central Luzon at 11 meters above sea level. So basically, all floods coming from the provinces of Pampanga and the province of Bulacan drains there, no, at the wetlands. Apart from this, Candaba wetlands is also an important bird area in what we call as the East Asia Australasian flyway. So this means that migratory birds winter in the wetlands. So it is a key biodiversity area. That's why there are proposals that we designate it as a Ramsar site of international importance. So the government is still working on it. Now we go to the problem here. Now, what's the problem with Candaba wetlands? The problem is that the wetlands is at risk due to unsustainable agricultural and aquaculture practices, and of course, land conversion. What's happening here, El, is that the wetlands is being converted as private establishments, and of course, given that the birds here are significantly declining. I've
Definitely.
written this story to underscore the need to conserve the Candaba wetlands, given that, of course, it is very important when it comes to climate change mitigation. It's very important when it comes to biodiversity and, of course, the food security, because the Candaba wetlands is being planted by rice, by farmers, and uh, the Candaba is it's a province in Pampanga where the Candaba wetlands is located, is the biggest rice producer in Pampanga, and these rice now are being consumed not only by the Kapampangan folks, not the people in Pampanga, but also by the others in the nearby provinces. So if not maintained, of course, this Candaba wetlands, which is what we call as our flood sponge here, would submerge Pampanga's low-lying areas into flood waters. El?
Thank you so much, Jag, for bringing light into that story. I see now really the importance of writing about the biodiversity and how it is affected by our climate. Now, I want to move on to Nigel. You have been passionate about biodiversity, so now tell us about the fact sheet project that you worked on for this fellowship.
Hello. So I wrote about Philippine marine biodiversity, so how these biodiverse zones are threatened and how they can even help us to fight against the climate crisis. Despite the Philippines being one of the most megadiverse countries, and we're actually even the center of marine biodiversity, many of these ecosystems, corals, seagrasses, mangroves, are being threatened, and are declining because of both human activity and climate change. So this is concerning because they serve as important players in not just maintaining the balance of marine ecosystems, which contribute to things like our economy, but also with it being that the ocean and these ecosystems now are the largest carbon sink in the world. So mangrove trees and forests are estimated to sequester around 5 times more carbon than terrestrial forests. And seagrass beds contribute to around 10% of the yearly sequestration of the ocean, even though they only cover less than 1% of the Earth's surface. So this is very, very significant. Of course, we also have preventative measures to push back against this decline. So we have things like the MPAs, marine protected areas. But there are studies and literature out there that also states that these areas can sometimes be lacking and are lacking, with many of the key areas still being unprotected. So there's still quite a long way to go in terms of policy effectiveness, implementation, and also management.
Thank you so much, Nigel, for that. I still want to ask you more about your stories because I'm also very close to biodiversity stories, but we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately. So thank you so much for this opportunity of you guys sharing your stories with us.
And now our third panel focuses on securing a clean energy future, and I'm joined by Zarina Hermojeno to discuss the transition towards renewable energy. How is the energy transition affecting the communities you visited for your stories? Because you write about Malabon, right?
Yes, I wrote about the narratives of the waste workers in Barangay Dampalit, Malabon City. Actually, what's nice about energy transition here is that it generates employment. And these waste workers turn waste into biogas in their barangay materials recovery facility, or commonly known as MRF. So now what's interesting here is that it is free use for the communities, which means everyone could cook here for free. And with this, schools and environmental organizations usually flock into this MRF to learn more about renewable energy. It's actually being a hub, an educational hub for those who want to learn or is enthusiastic about renewable energy. However, these waste workers aren't compensated enough for the work that they do. And this is their problem. There isn't enough livable wage. So I think if we do have if we implement energy transition like right now, it needs to be inclusive. Everyone should hop in the progress of this transition. It's not just for those who want to forego the benefits of it, but also those who are working in championing this energy transition.
Actually, my story I went to Laguna, in particularly in Barangay Marinig Cabuyao, and then I've met this fisherman. His name is Kuya Lino Hastiliana, and he's one of those fishermen who fear for their livelihood because there's this 2,000 hectare of photovoltaic solar power panel.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And the problem is that the fishermen whose yields decreased over the years are fearing that the solar panels will be placed to
The fishing
the fishing grounds. They would be forced to flee far away, and they would be clumped with other fishermen who they don't originally fish with. So there is a need for government to really consider, and not just consider, I mean prioritize those are that would be directly affected by our transition to renewable energy. And
Definitely. Thank you, Zarina, and thank you,
Thank you
Celine.
so much.
Our next panel is the future of farming. Now, at this point, we will be joined by AC Tupas and Joshua Mendoza to explore sustainable agriculture. AC, you can go first. How are our farmers and how are they adapting to sustainable farming?
Here in the province of Negros Occidental, the so-called sugar bowl of the Philippines, it's still quite very hard for our farmers to really adapt to the sustainable agriculture or sustainable farming because in the first place, they are still very vulnerable to the effects of the climate crisis that we are facing right now. So my chosen community was the Nakalang Farm Workers Association, and that is based in Bago City here in Negros Occidental. So we know that Negros Occidental is the so-called sugar bowl of the Philippines, and sugarcane is really the lifeblood of the Negros Occidental's industry, as we produce here about 60% of the country's overall sugar input. So, according to the farmers that I have met and I have immersed with, the effects of climate change are now really felt in the vast sugar cane fields here in Negros. So, according to them, they can no longer predict the current climate, nor they can navigate the conditions of the weather. Because, for example, when it is supposed to be hot season, the heat persists, or vice versa, when it is supposed to be raining, or when it is supposed to be dry season, then it rains. So the impact to agriculture in the farms here in Negros is that our farmers cannot harvest the crops regularly. And of course, according to them, the volatile climate has really damaged their livelihood, which is of course their only source of income. So with regard to food security, according to them, their production turns into losses, unfortunately, due to the abnormality of the climate. So for them, there is really no assurance that they can salvage their crops because even the support services of the government are not really enough and sustainable according to them. So that is why they said that strong typhoons and other extreme weather conditions aggravated by climate change really damage their crops, reduce their yields, and of course, lower their incomes. So, in addition to that, they also have mentioned that the farmers have experienced getting their work doubled due to heavy effects of heavy rain. So, just when you thought the heat was good in the morning, they say that a deluge of rain will just surprise them when it takes over in the afternoon. So, for them, the work doubles because they have to replace their destroyed crops again because of course the flood completely wipes out the seed. So for them in facing the climate crisis that, of course, we're all collectively experiencing, on their part, no, there is really a need for more government aid, environmental programs, and climate literacy. So, according to our farmers, because they also wish that the government would actively implement more programs centered on addressing their common problems, specifically on providing more farm equipment and mechanism, as well as the development of farm to market roads, among others. So they also wish to promote organic agriculture as a way for them to adapt and to mitigate the effects of climate change.
Thank you, AC. I'm pretty sure this will also be reflected in what Joshua will share with us. Joshua, can you share with us how the climate crisis has affected our farmers?
I have discovered how farmers adapt and how farmers are now aware of the interconnectedness of climate change and food security, and of course, how it threatens their main source of livelihood. I have witnessed how farmers are turning their agricultural waste, such as manures, into a renewable energy called biogas. They are in the process of embracing zero waste management that benefits them, as this biogas could be also used for cooking. There's this memorable quote that a farmer shared to me. He said that zero equals more. It is because that the things we thought were useless actually have many benefits. And aside from that, the impact of the scorching heat that we are currently experiencing isn't limited to us. It also affects animals such as carabaos, because it potentially affecting their reproductive processes and the country's milk production. And also the farmers and the carapreneurs who rely on carabaos as their source of livelihood. Ayun. There are many climate stories that is waiting to be told and documented in the agriculture sector. And as a Novo Ecijano and Nueva Ecija as our country's rice granary, I believe that I carry the responsibility to tell these stories and somehow amplify these voices of those who are affected.
I wrote about sustainable agriculture as well. So did talk about the satellite mapping technology that we are currently applying in our farms. And also for the second part of my story, I wrote about rice varieties. And this was a good chance for me to give a platform to farmers to talk about how they feel when modernization comes into their practice. Because, you know, farming is a very traditional practice. And I'm pretty sure you know that our farmers are sometimes not very open to adopt these modernizations, but actually with the help of our scientists, they are now more open to share the knowledge that they're getting from their past traditional work, and also combining that with the new technologies that our scientists are proposing. So we have, as I've said, satellite mapping technology, which helps them monitor the farms that they have without actually needing to go to, you know, bigger agencies. They can just make the decision if the plant needs more water or if it's infested by pests. And actually, I would also like to mention Osha's story talked about how pests are now arriving in the Philippines because of climate change, right? And I've also mentioned that because in my second story where I talked about rice varieties, we have these newer rice varieties that are catered to preventing the outbreak. So, you know, our scientists actually recommend farmers to plant more than one variety, maybe hopefully three, so that they can avoid a total wipeout of their crops when when an outbreak comes. And yeah, I guess that's a very nice topic that AC and, and Joshua also shared to us. I guess we can now move on to the next panel.
From agriculture, now we explore creativity for climate. I'm joined by Anne Domingo and Aidan Bernales to discuss how art and music can drive climate advocacy. I want to ask, Anne, you have always been passionate by arts. How is the industry affected by climate change?
Hi, Sigi. So much of the art industry has gone online over the next from the past few decades already, especially after the pandemic. NFTs are on the rise, digital art is on the rise, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should discount
cultural artifacts from our past and how they're affected by environmental changes. So a primary example of an artifact that's been directly affected by climate change is, of course, the San Agustin Museum. That's in it, since it's directly or it's primarily made out of adobe. Adobe is a type of material that's cooling during times of intense El Nino or during heat waves. So you can imagine that it's perfect for weathers like, for example, those in the summer. But it's also susceptible to water. It erodes from intense rainfall. It's also prone to biological growth, which is basically when vines grow over walls. The museum itself is a prime case study of how climate change can potentially destroy cultural artifacts. But other victims also include its antiques in the paintings as well. The paintings that San Agustin Museum houses, the San Agustin Museums, they actually caught mold during the height of the pandemic since the conservationists weren't able to attend to them. So it actually caught a bunch of white mold. So in short, climate change has been in the process of erasing our cultural identity. It's threatening our it's threatening our arts industry as a whole materially. That's why it's important that we highlight case studies such as these, so that audiences are more aware of how our beloved landmarks in the Philippines are affected by changes in the weather. San Agustin Museum, it's not the only type of landmark that's available in the Philippines that's affected by climate change. We also have a bunch of other landmarks that are affected by changes in the climate, changes in the weather, changes in humidity. And it's very important that other cultural journalists join in the conversation about this. Cultural journalism in general, it shouldn't just be about highlighting stories of the arts, but also how the arts are affected by culture, and how the arts are affected by climate, and how climate affects arts per se. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for that, and I feel like other culture journalists should also hop on to that kind of discussion.
No matter how we think of arts as something that is mundane, or the proximity of arts to climate change is far, it is not far.
It's actually connected.
It's actually connected. So let's go to Aidan. As a musician, how do you think the creative industry can help in our fight for climate action?
Musician is very generous. You should say future Grammy winner. Shout out. I'm kidding. But yeah, I want to bring up this quote by Aristotle, right? We're talking about creativity. And he says that the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. And facts are the first level of understanding the climate crisis, right? But to empathize with it, we have to make people understand its effects for them personally. We have to make them understand what it feels like for them to be part of this climate world, to be part of this world that we're in, and to be part of this climate crisis that we're currently being affected by. And creativity will allow us to penetrate our insights and ideas into the minds of these people. While facts tell us that what we should know, art and creativity will actually allow us to realize what we have already known all along and how we can take action when it comes to that. So we have such amazing global artists advocating for climate change. And since you mentioned the topic of music, I'd like to bring up, the likes of John Lennon, whose song Imagine has become this sort of anthem for the climate crisis, who inspired people to actually try to hope for a world that actually exists, not just within the song, but also outside of it, that allows them to think of a world that they can actually live in, that does not just live in the world of the song. And even artists, like current artists now, like Billie Eilish, she not only sings about the climate crisis, but she's also taking it upon her work in the industry by making recycled vinyls and stuff like that, making vinyls from recycled parts and materials. We must not forget that art and the creative industry also does practices that worsens the climate crisis. And it's these people who are already within that industry and who have power within that industry who can be able to adapt the practices of the industry to become more sustainable. And they're the ones who can help us out along the way. And there's a lot of Filipino artists as well who are finding creative approaches through art that actually allows us to recognize and reflect on the climate crisis that we're in. And I come from Ateneo, and we had an installation there in the Arete. That's this big sprawling, like it looks like an alien almost in the middle of the field. And it's this amazing artwork by Leroy New, who actually envisioned like a little world within the Ateneo. And this installation does not just work as an art piece, but it's also a little agricultural space, because there are flowers that bloom there, and there are different exotic flowers and exotic plants that live within there. And I guess it allows us to reflect on our existence in a contained space, and how we don't actually just have to have a world that exists just within these artistic spaces, and that we can actually envision a world, as long as we can cultivate it, as long as we can care for it, and as long as we can make it our own, we can have a world that actually exists, that is sustainable, and that will actually be good for our future, and that we can actually care for, I guess, as caretakers in this world. And this will help us more than anything take action in saving our world.
I remember in one of our discussions in my grad school that pop culture, which includes music, can really steer conversations no matter how we think or we think of them. So that's a great conversation that we were having. So let's go to the next and last panel
Last
actually.
panel, time is moving fast. So for our last panel, this is about empowering youth in climate action. I am joined by Edmar de los Santos and Abigail Repotente to discuss how young people are leading the charge.
Okay, so my story is more centered on having climate conversations and, of course, climate change education. And one thing that I'm hoping for is I'm not trying to sound like messianic, but I really hope that it will start on the level of like having this changes in the attitude of individuals that would soon turn into behavioral changes that for it to have like a sustainable impact not just within themselves but also in the nature that they're living in. And I feel like this is one thing that could help in seeing climate issues as a problem that's not just affecting the physical aspect of nature, but also the society in it. And more than the individual level, I do hope that there would be more attention being provided over the overarching sector of development and for us to stray away from like the common stereotypes that we have with the people in it. And most likely, I would also want to see in the near future for green jobs to like be more in number and also for the people to take part in it, since we have to highlight that there are many sustainable opportunities that we have from companies, from organizations. They also offer those green jobs, but it's just a matter of like looking and actually appreciating its importance, especially during these times that the impacts of climate change is really felt.
Edmar, I want to ask you, what have you discovered about youth participation in the climate conversation?
My story focused on the participation of youth in climate action. So through my story, I got various insights from different people on the participation of youth in climate action or joining in the conversation. So the Youth Council, specifically the Sangguniang Kabataan. So Sangguniang Kabataan is the youth council in the Philippines. And they've been put into the hot water over the years for conducting programs solely for sports and entertainment. I know these are important programs to develop the sports and skills, cultural skills of the youth. But I understand that they hold these programs because these are the only programs that could easily spark the interest of youth in participating in programs. And some youth officials even say that they believe that youths are not interested in this cause or issue, but the person or the youth member that I interviewed for my article said that they are just waiting for a program by their youth council so that they can participate. And they've told me that they are interested really because there are lots of climate issues happening in my province, specifically Ilocos Norte, which is one of the perhaps in the recent months and recent days, we recorded high temperatures. So these are just all the manifestations that we are vulnerable to climate crisis. But until now, it's just so sad that even our youth leaders don't understand climate change or the science behind behind climate change. So it's important for the youth council to create interesting programs. If the problem is the lack of participation or the lack of interest among the youth member, it's important for the SK officials to find ways to make their program interesting. But perhaps the primary concern as well is the budget of the youth council. So they also prepare lots of documents to prepare. They prepare lots of documents before they can conduct a program. And these are just some of the factors that needed to be considered before they can, you know, conduct programs on climate change. But I still believe that youths today are more perhaps more interested
or more aware of climate change or the science behind climate change. It's just that SK must know not o- SK must know how to plan programs and also to, to, to tap government agencies which concerns about the environment and climate change who can help them for funding, because one of the problems that they raised during the interview was they lack budget. But other scientists that I have interviewed also recommended them, of course, to partner with NGOs and government agencies for them to have, fund in their programs on climate action.
I'm pretty sure your stories on its own influence and motivate other youth to write about climate change, to learn more about it, and ultimately to take action.
So what a fantastic set of discussions. We've covered so much today. So
What's your favorite part about the discussions?
well, actually, my favorite part of the discussion is basically there's just this realization that this fellowship program is just so diverse because imagine the fellows came from different backgrounds, specifically from north of the Philippines to south of the Philippines. Imagine we have stories coming from the Ilocos region down to the Mindanao region. So it's in a way
representative of the whole Philippines.
Yeah, it's
I
a
guess.
representative of the whole Philippines. And one thing also is that I realized that climate communication or climate journalism in general is writing stories, especially of those in rural areas that are hard hit by climate crisis but are receiving less to none coverages.
You're right. And again we go back to the need for budget, right? And I really hope, I guess my hope for these stories is for it to reach those people in power, policymakers especially, so that we can provide more support and more funding to these different sectors affected by climate change, especially right now that we're suffering from El Nino. The heat in the Philippines is insane.
Yeah.
And I've also mentioned it in my story how billions of money is already lost because of the El Nino and the climate crisis affecting us. So I guess another favorite part of mine for this opportunity to talk about these stories, to write these stories, our co-fellows, the whole fellowship program allowed us to amplify the voices of the marginalized. And this is something close to my heart as a development communication graduate. These people doesn't have the platform usually to voice out their concerns. But with what we did, we interacted with them, we interviewed them, and then we put their story into writing and spread it out in publication. And this was a good way to inform the public of the problems that they're facing right now, and also the solutions that we have, so that we know that there is hope for the future.
Yeah, and of course, another takeaway would be that climate change isn't just a concept. It's intersectional. It's our reality, and it's highly tied to different facets of our life. Because who would have thought that even museums are affected now by climate
I
crisis?
didn't know
right?
before.
I didn't know too.
So I guess to wrap this up, I would also like to thank
Yes.
Climate Tracker Asia and our funders, the U.S. Embassy, for allowing us to write these stories. It's also the message of our co-fellows. Thank you for giving us the opportunity and the support to write these stories, to share them with the public, and to
Our mentors, of course.
and our mentors, and to just do these our own way of
Yeah. Writing.
acting for climate change.
Okay.
And today's event has shown us how crucial it is to keep telling these stories and to keep driving positive change. And as we draw to a close, we want to hear from our mentors.
Hello Next Gen Fellows! Congratulations on completing your stories. Proud kami sa inyo at sana'y simula pa lamang ito ng pag-amplify ninyo sa mga kwentong klima, ng kalikasan at ng mga komunidad. Padagosan na kita!
Hello, Next Gen Fellows and Climate Tracker Asia. Congratulations on your graduation. Special shout out, syempre, to Climates, the best house of the bunch. Ayan. All I want to say is that as your editor and your mentor over the past few months, it was just really an immense honor and pleasure, to read the stories that you submitted, learning about your communities, the challenges that you're facing, but also the opportunities that are emerging, on how to address the climate crisis, So, again, congratulations. I'm really excited for what's in store for you. To listen to your work, to watch your work, to read your work in the future, So, congratulations ulit. All your mentors, I'm pretty sure, are just here to help you along the way. Good luck, congrats, at padayon lang.
To our Next Gen Fellows, aka our kids, congratulations! I want to express my admiration for your dedication to finish this program and the stories that you brought to life. Sobrang nakaka-proud. As your mentor/ate, it's been an honor guiding you to produce stories of your communities and witnessing your transformation into amazing climate storytellers. I hope this experience left a lasting impact on you and will open doors, just like what happened to me when I finished my first Climate Tracker Fellowship 4 years ago. We all know that the climate crisis demands swift and ambitious action from everyone. Journalists and storytellers like us play a crucial role in this fight. Remember, the stories you tell matter. We believe in you, and we in Climate Tracker Asia are always here to support your journey.
Hi, fellows. As we close this chapter for Journey Together, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude and admiration for each of you. Your hard work, dedication, and passion for climate journalism have not only shaped your stories, but also enriched your community and inspired meaningful change. From our first online learning sessions to our time together in person, I've witnessed you grow from emerging journalists into confident storytellers ready to take on the world and tell the narratives that matter. Your journey has been one of learning, collaboration, and unity, and I'm so proud of the stories you produced along the way. Stories that only you can tell the world, like what I always say during our sessions. I want to thank you for your tireless efforts, your willingness to learn, and your unwavering commitment to making a difference. You are the next gen of climate journalism, and I hope that the spark we ignited in you continues to grow, fueling your efforts to create and produce more stories that matter, stories that will impact and make a difference in your communities. I hate to be cheesy, but you know that I love you all, and I will always be an ate to each of you. This isn't goodbye. It's a new beginning. Keep writing, keep sharing, and keep inspiring. Together, we are writing the story of our generation, one that reflects hope, resilience, and progress. Congratulations, graduates.
That's super sweet. I know. Thank you again to our mentors. We wouldn't have done it without you.
I hope to see you soon in more opportunities, like Miss Gaya said, right? This is a very
Yeah.
warming message to hear from all of them.
Yeah, and as they said, the storytelling for climate doesn't just end here;
Mhm.
it continues.
Mhm.
So that's all for today. Guys, thank you for joining us in writing the story of our generation.
Yes, and remember, our voices matter, our stories matter, and together we can make a difference.
This has been Sige Lacerna.
And this is El Gison. Thanks again, and see you next time.